Now let's have a look at the easiest way of, or a quick way to change the color. Let's take the blue color as the foreground color and hit Ctrl U. That gives you the hue and saturation. Now when you hit the check the colorize button, you see it takes the color from the foreground selected color. So that is what the characteristic of the hue saturation option. Now let's try the same thing with the skin color. So select by pressing Alt, click on the skin color, and we sample this skin tone as a foreground color, and now say Ctrl U for hue and saturation and say colorize. So now we are not exactly on the shade of the skin, but at least we are somewhere closer. And now let's change the saturation and let's try and change the hue. And you see we are very close to the skin tone. And now for a little bit of fine tuning of this shade, you can go to image adjustment and selective colors, and in selective color let's select the neutrals, and since this color is playing around with yellow and magenta, so let's take off some yellow and take off some magenta, and we are now very close to the skin tone. And now for the another method to change the color of this splash is make a duplicate layer of this splash layer and keep the original layer as the backup, and now let's create one more duplicate layer. So let's name this layers as splash 1 and splash 2. You can double click on the name of the layer and can rename the name. And now to the splash 1 layer, go to image adjustment and say desaturate, and now that converts the image into grayscale image, meaning it takes off all the color information from the image. And now to the splash 2 layer, lock the layer with this tiny little button, and now take the sample color from the skin. So I'm on the brush tool and holding Alt key on the keyboard, clicking on the sample of the color. Just feel this layer with the selected skin tone, Alt backspace for the feel, and now go to the blending mode and change the blending mode to color. And now it still doesn't look anywhere close to the skin tone. Now let's do something to match the color. Now go to the splash 1 layer, which is a grayscale splash image. Say Ctrl L and change the levels to make it more brighter. There we are. Say OK, and if you still want to fine-tune this further, say Control, go to Splash 2, say Control U, and play around with the saturation. Say OK, and we are very close to the skin tone in this area. And now you can merge these two layers. Select the Splash 2, say Control E on the keyboard, and you get this as a new layer. And now you can also delete the backup layer. And now let's go to filters and say liquify. And in liquify, keeping all the settings as default settings, take this first tool, that is forward wrap. With a medium sized brush, just drag the edges inside the face and extend a bit further. Now let's create a masking layer on this layer, and with a big soft brush, take the black as the foreground color, hit X to change the foreground color to black, and with around 50 to 60% of opacity, paint over the edges to blend it with the face. And if you see something like this, you can take the foreground color as white and paint back on those areas. So the basic of masking or the masking layer is that the black color makes it invisible and the white color makes it visible. Now let's take the dodge tool and click on the layer and not on the masking. Click on the layer, and with the range as midtones and exposure as 50, few clicks on the exposure as 10 to 20, few clicks can help you match those edges more precisely. Now similar way, I have already created the other side splash and a small piece of drip at the bottom, and now let's do the same thing and same technique. We'll create the dripping lipstick or dripping lips. And now for the lips, let's take another piece of splash from this stock image. Copy, Ctrl C. Let's go back to the project file, and on a separate layer let's have this lips or the drip image pasted with Ctrl V. Scale it down, and before scaling it down too tiny, let's make a cutout of this image. I'm using Magic Wand tool with 26 tolerance. It's pretty easy to take off the background because it's a flat white background. Hit delete on the keyboard, Ctrl D to deselect, and now let's bring in this object close to the lips, scale it to a very tiny size. And now let's try the same method to match the colors to the lips. Let's sample one dark shade from the lips and Ctrl U to get hue saturation and colorize. Let's change the saturation to max because this is a pretty saturated deep color. And now let's save these settings. Click on this tiny drop down, say save preset, and we name this as lips on the desktop and say save. So the values are saved now in form of a preset file. Now say cancel to this. And let me tell you why I was saving the color settings. Now in the process you have seen that this object was losing its glossiness, and to retain that glossiness I'm going to take out the white glare from this object and bring it to the separate layer so that I have complete control over the glossiness of this object. Since the lips are pretty glossy, they're highly it's a highly glossy texture on the lips, so we need to retain that on the dripping of that lip. And to do this, let's say Ctrl A to select the whole thing and say copy. Now go to the channel and say new channel by clicking on this tiny icon that creates a alpha 2 channel. Let's deselect and now go to edit and say paste special and paste in place. So this got pasted on the exact location where we picked it from. And if you don't say paste special, then it will get pasted on the center of the canvas. And now to this got pasted as a grayscale image. That is what happens when you bring it to alpha channel. And now let's say Ctrl L on the keyboard, and what I want to do is make everything else dark as possible, almost black, and just retain the white glossy part on it. Say OK. Now say Control on the keyboard and click on this alpha channel, and this will select this white part or the white glossy part. And now let's go back, keep the selection on and go back to layers and click on the layers once. Let's create a new layer above this lips layer and say control and backspace, that will fill that selection with the foreground background color, that is white. And now if you see that we just got the white glossy part from the alpha channel. And now we can change the lips color. Again, go back to the hue and saturation, control U, and then click on this tiny drop down, say load presets, and this is the preset what we saved on the desktop, lips.ahu, and say load, and you see the color of the lips change. We can do some modification to this color to match it perfectly. And say OK. Now the glossiness is intact and the color also is changed and matched with the lips. And now let's create a masking layer on the lips layer. B for brush, take a soft smooth brush and with around 50 to 70% opacity, let's blend this area. Now we also need to blend the glossy layer, so let's name this layer as gloss, and with the masking layer on it, let's blend that area as well. And now you can go to filters, liquify, and spread this end a little bit to make it look like a source of a dripping area. And now change the masking on it with white color, again the black color, and the blending.